All right, Raider Nation, get ready, because the past is about to meet the present. When you think of Pete Carroll, you probably think of that wild energy, the gum chewing, and those fired up sidelines. But what if I told you that same fire could be exactly what lights up the Las Vegas Raiders in 2025? Let's rewind the clock. Carroll's first go-around as a head coach wasn't glamorous. In 1994, with the New York Jets, he started strong, 2-0, even held a 6-5 record midway. Then came the collapse. 5 straight losses. Season done. Carroll fired. But that wasn't the end. It was the beginning. 3 years later, he's in New England, his first year. 10 wins, a playoff run. Not bad for a guy people were already calling a one and done. He was building, quietly, patiently. Now, fast forward to Las Vegas. The Raiders are gambling big on Carroll's experience, and history says that when he gets a second shot, he delivers. He's known for transforming locker rooms, changing cultures, and getting the most out of young rosters. Just ask Seattle. The question is, can he do it again? Can Pete Carroll turn a struggling Raiders squad into a team no one wants to face by midseason? Las Vegas doesn't need a miracle. They need momentum. They need belief. And Pete Carroll has a history of creating both from chaos. And let's be honest, there's no franchise more familiar with chaos than the Raiders. Now, here's where things get really fascinating. Pete Carroll wasn't always the football wizard we remember from Seattle. After the Jets let him go, he didn't vanish. He sharpened his craft as defensive coordinator for the 49ers. Then came the 1997 hiring cycle. Carroll got interviews with the Lions, Rams, and eventually the Patriots. And that's where things got complicated. Carroll replaced Bill Parcells, a coaching legend and a man the veteran Patriots adored. Imagine walking into a locker room where half the team still wishes your predecessor was in charge. That's what Carroll faced. Yet somehow, he started strong. The Patriots won their first 4 games and outscored opponents 130-40. But just when the hype train was building, the Week 5 bye derailed it all. They stumbled, losing 4 of the next 5. Sound familiar? Because here's a pattern. Pete Carroll teams start fast, but that early momentum can be fragile. Still, Carroll wasn't done. He rallied the team, winning 5 of the last 7 games and clinching the AFC East. His team boasted both a top 10 offense and defense, led by a young Drew Bledsoe and the dynamic Curtis Martin. They beat the Dolphins in the wild card round, but the Steelers edged them out in a brutal 7-6 playoff heartbreaker. But before we continue, if you're loving this breakdown of Pete Carroll's wild coaching journey and what it could mean for the Raiders, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and don't forget to smash the bell icon so you never miss a deep dive like this. Let's get back to it. Carroll was fired 2 seasons later in 1999. Then, silence. He stepped away from NFL sidelines for over a decade, until 2010. The Seahawks, coming off a miserable 5-11 season, handed Carroll the keys. Full control, total authority, and Carroll wasted no time. He brought in John Schneider as GM and kept defensive minds Gus Bradley and Dan Quinn, 2 names that would help build the legendary Legion of Boom. And that first draft? An absolute masterclass. Russell Okung, Earl Thomas, Golden Tate, and Cam Chancellor. Carroll wasn't just building a team, he was laying the foundation for a dynasty. Now, here's the real question. Can he do that again in Las Vegas? Now, here's where Pete Carroll's magic really started to show. In his first season with Seattle, Carroll made over 200 roster moves. That's not a rebuild. That's a complete reset. But one move stood above the rest, trading for Marshawn Lynch. That wasn't just a transaction, it was a culture shift. The Seahawks only improved by 2 wins that year, finishing 7-9. But believe it or not, that was enough to win the NFC West. Yeah, you heard that right. A losing record. Still, it earned them a home playoff game against Drew Brees and the defending champion Saints. Everyone counted them out. Then beast mode happened. Seattle shocked the world with a 41-36 win. They lost to the Bears in the next round, but the message was clear. Pete Carroll had built something real. Now, let's connect the dots back to the Las Vegas Raiders. Carroll's teams don't always start like juggernauts, but when they click, they punch way above their weight. So, how does that apply to Vegas? Let's talk about the Raiders' opening stretch of the 2025 season. First 5 games: Patriots, Chargers, Commanders, Bears, Colts. Not exactly a murderer's row. All 5 of those teams finished last season with losing records. That means one thing. Now, if history tells us anything, it's that Carroll's teams often come out firing, just like he did with the Jets in '94 and the Patriots in '97. He may stumble mid-season, but his fingerprints are always on those first few wins. The question is, can the Raiders capitalize on a soft early schedule, stack wins, and build the belief this locker room desperately needs? With Carroll at the helm, it's not just possible, it's expected. When you look at Pete Carroll's career, one thing becomes clear: he learns from every single chapter. Whether it's coaching Drew Bledsoe in New England or rebuilding in Seattle, his ability to handle adversity has only gotten stronger with time. That's what separates seasoned coaches from the rest: repetition, pressure, and growth. You face the fire enough times, and eventually, you stop flinching. So here's the big question. What would a successful first season for Pete Carroll in Las Vegas actually look like? Now, I've already put my prediction on the table, and I stand by it. I'm calling a 9-8 finish for the Raiders this year. Let's break it down. AFC West, 3-3. AFC South, 3-1. NFC East, 1-3. Other matchups: Bears, Browns, Patriots, 2-1. Add it all up, that's 9 wins. Now, does that guarantee a playoff spot? Not necessarily. Last season, teams needed at least 10 wins to sneak into the AFC postseason picture. The Broncos, for example, made it in with exactly 10. So 9 wins might leave us just short, unless this year's playoff race turns into a chaotic grind where every team is beating each other up. But here's the twist: I think the Raiders can start fast. The early schedule gives us winnable matchups. And if we can steal one we're not expected to win, say against the Eagles or the Commanders, suddenly the math changes. What if we sweep the Chargers? That alone could flip the narrative on the entire AFC West. Still, I'm staying realistic. A 4-2 division record would be a dream, but 2-4 is more likely. Even so, if Carroll can get this team to 9 gritty wins with a fresh system and a roster still taking shape, that's a victory in year 1. And based on what I'm hearing, Raider Nation agrees. Let's be honest. Division games are a different beast. It doesn't matter if you're the underdog or the favorite. When it's AFC West versus AFC West, the gloves come off. You can argue the AFC West is among the most stacked divisions in the NFL, but inside those games, talent gaps shrink. Rivalries take over, mistakes get magnified, and anything can happen. Just look at last season. Against the Chiefs, the Raiders only lost by 7 in one game and just 2 in the other. That's the reigning Super Bowl champs, and we were right there, fighting till the final whistle. Then there's Denver. In one matchup, the Raiders jumped out to a 17-3 lead. Then a brutal pick-6 shifted the entire momentum, while Brock Bowers was wide open in the end zone. In the rematch, it was another one-possession battle deep into the fourth quarter, even after our quarterback went down. That's how close these games are. So yeah, a 3-3 division record is absolutely on the table. But that's just the beginning. Because after the divisional slugfests, the real test comes. Can this Raiders team beat the teams it's supposed to beat? Can they steal a couple they shouldn't? Winning 9 games sounds great until you look closer. If 6 of your 8 losses are blowouts, are you really building momentum? Competitive losses matter. Staying in games matters. We saw the opposite under Josh McDaniels. The Raiders went 6-11 that year, but 9 of those losses were by a single possession. They were close, but couldn't finish. Pete Carroll's history tells a different story. When he takes over, his teams usually come out fast, And even in the one season he didn't, he still won a playoff game and nearly took out the Bears the next week. That was no fluke, that was Carroll football. And now it's Raiders football. Let's talk about a stat that could change everything for the Las Vegas Raiders in 2025, and it has to do with one surprising factor: the dome. The Raiders finally have their guy under center, Geno Smith. The big question now is, can he rise to the moment? Well, if recent analytics are any indication, the answer could be a resounding yes, especially inside Allegiant Stadium. Warren Sharp of Sharp Football Analysis recently broke down something fascinating. Geno Smith's performance skyrockets when he plays in domes. Let's break down the numbers. In domes, Geno throws 6.7 touchdowns for every interception. Outdoors, that number falls to just 1.6 TDs per pick. His yards per attempt also jump from 7.2 outdoors to 8.2 in domes. Even his sack interception rate gets slashed in half indoors. And most importantly, his overall success rate and efficiency EPA per attempt shoot way up under a roof. Simply put, Geno Smith is a different quarterback when he's not battling wind, rain, or freezing cold. And now, he's playing home games in a climate-controlled stadium in Las Vegas. Of course, it's fair to note the sample size isn't massive. In the last 3 years, Geno has started 10 dome games and 39 outdoors. But the results are still striking enough to draw real confidence. Pair that with Pete Carroll's return, and suddenly, this isn't just a good fit. It's a system built to elevate Geno to the best version of himself. And if that happens, the rest of the AFC better start paying attention. Here's something you might not have realized. Geno Smith is about to play 12 games indoors this season. Let that sink in. Over the past 3 years, Geno has played just 10 games in domes, and even those were all on the road in hostile environments. Still, his performance has been lights out. We're talking 20 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions in those games. That's not a fluke. That's a trend. Now in 2025, Geno gets 9 dome games at home in Allegiant Stadium, plus road trips to 3 more domes: Houston, Indianapolis, and Los Angeles. That's 12 total. For a quarterback who thrives in controlled conditions, this is massive. You start to wonder, do we need to bump those win-loss predictions up just a bit? But let's zoom out for a second. The Raiders entered this offseason with more questions than answers at quarterback. There were rumors of a trade for Matthew Stafford that didn't happen. And then, almost quietly, they made their move: a deal with Seattle for Geno Smith. To outsiders, it looked like a short-term fix. But if you read between the lines, this was never about a stopgap. Pete Carroll didn't just approve the deal, he wanted it. Badly. "I was hoping we could get Geno from the moment this all began," Carroll said in May. He was always ready. Always focused. When he got his shot, I was thrilled. Carroll saw something in Geno long before the world did. During their time in Seattle, Smith wasn't just a backup. He was someone Carroll believed in. Someone he trusted. Someone he prepared. And now, they're back together, this time in Las Vegas. Add the dome advantage, the mutual trust, and the experience. This isn't just a reunion. It might be the most important pairing in the AFC West this year. There's a familiar feeling here. Because when you hear people talk about Geno Smith thriving in domes, it echoes a name Raider Nation knows all too well: Derek Carr. Carr, too, was far more efficient indoors than outside. He handled warm climates better than cold ones, and that reality showed up in big games. But there's one key difference with Geno. He's been through the cold. He's played in the rain, the wind, the freezing sleet, game after game. Yes, the numbers clearly favor him in domes, but unlike Carr, Geno isn't unfamiliar with adversity. He's been tested in the harshest conditions. Now let's say the Raiders make a run, 10 wins, sneak into the playoffs, and they're headed to Cincinnati in January. 30 degrees, maybe snow falling, facing Joe Burrow and the Bengals. That's not ideal for dome-dominant Geno. But here's the twist. This offense isn't built to live or die by the quarterback. with a powerful run game led by Ashton Genty and Roaster, plus the short yardage precision of Jacoby Myers, and the dynamic tight end duo of Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer, the Raiders have options. If Geno's not clicking in the cold, they'll lean into ground control. Chew clock, limit turnovers, and keep Mahomes, Burrow, or Allen off the field. That's the game plan for cold weather survival. And maybe, just maybe, the path takes the Raiders to a dome like Houston, where Geno could fire freely. But if the road leads to Buffalo, Baltimore, or Kansas City, it's all about grit, balance, and execution. The Raiders have likely already done the math. Their analytics team knows the split, Geno inside versus Geno outside. And while Carr never truly faced those cold weather wars consistently, Geno has. It doesn't make him immune, but it makes him prepared. Still, here's the real question. Will Geno Smith be a top 10 quarterback in 2025? At first glance, probably not. Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Burrow. That's 4 names locked in above him already. Let's wrap this up by putting everything in perspective. Right now, Geno Smith probably isn't in the top 10 quarterback conversation, not with names like Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, and Lamar Jackson holding court. The next tier, guys like Goff, Stroud, Herbert, Jordan Love, and even Jaden Daniels if his rookie campaign pans out. To break into that top tier, Geno will need more than efficiency. He'll need wins. You don't get ranked as elite unless you're in the thick of a division race by week 18. And if the Raiders go into that final matchup against Kansas City with a real shot at the AFC West crown, Geno will be in the MVP conversation. Until then, the expectations are grounded, but hopeful. Geno may not start 2025 as a top 10 QB, but with the dome-heavy schedule, the weapons around him, and Pete Carroll's trust, he has a real chance to surprise the league. Speaking of weapons, Brock Bowers is already making waves. When the Raiders drafted him, many questioned the move. After all, they already had Michael Mayer, and Bowers was seen as a luxury pick. But in just one season, he broke rookie tight end records with 112 catches, and he did it without elite quarterback play. Now entering year 2, Bowers is gaining recognition not just as a top tight end, but potentially the best in the league. CBS even listed him as the best player wearing number 89, surpassing stars like Mark Andrews. That's no small feat, and it's not just media hype. Max Crosby praised Bowers' attitude, humility, and work ethic, calling him unbelievable, dynamic, and relentless. The kind of player who shows up early, stays late, and never takes a play off. That's exactly the type of leader a young Raiders team needs. With Geno at quarterback, Pete Carroll guiding the culture, and Bowers anchoring the offense, the Raiders might not just be rebuilding, they could be reawakening. The story's not finished, but the foundation, it's stronger than it's been in years.